have been waiting for. Yes, that is right, ladies and gentlemen. We are looking at Total Media Live for the very first episode ever. Now, welcome, guys. Today's episode, the very first episode of all time, and in fact, something that we've all been looking forward to. Musk Media is presenting their very first live podcast episode, and our guest is a very unique person. Somebody that I hold very dear and very close to my heart. My good friend, Nick Yugioh. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for him.
I don't know why I'm crying in the club right now. So beautiful.
Oh, yeah, man. Oh,
We're
yeah.
here, man. We
Oh, yeah.
finally are ready to rock and roll on this episode 1, and I am just so honored to be the first guest. I really think that, this has been such a good work in progress up into this moment. I think we worked really hard to be getting here, so I am really ready for you to grill me on these questions.
Honestly, man, when you go ahead and talk about it, there's a lot of things that we could talk about. And, there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about. But
Oh, yeah.
I'm hopefully going to introduce our audience that's listening on Apple Music, on Apple iTunes, because we are now on podcast.
Apple Podcast.
Yes, you can find us on Apple Podcast. And it's just really exciting, right? I can barely get the words out.
I know. He's really been talking about this nonstop. Our group chat blows up almost at least 2 or 3 times a week. But we're here, we're ready to do this, and it is beautiful, and it is a great one in the making.
Oh, yeah, guys. And honestly, it'll be really fun to go ahead and this is the first episode ever on a really weird day. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to point out is that it's actually leap year. I know that's something that's kind of small.
We're living in a space of time that did not exist last year.
But I mean, just it's one of those things where, in 4 years, hopefully we're able to look back and say, this was our first episode ever and it happened to be on a leap day. I thought that was something that was pretty unique. Thank goodness we're all here to be able to do this. So
we won't be able to celebrate this anniversary for another 4 years.
I mean, yeah. What do we do? What do we do for the 1 year episode next year? Do we do it on the 1st or do we do it on the 28th? I mean,
I think we do it in 2024, bro.
That's actually pretty good. But anyways, guys, so there's a lot of hot topics to go ahead and talk about. And like I said, one of the things that I want to do as we have guests on is I want to provide an opportunity for them to kind of express some of the things that they are a part of, whether it's music, whether it's their job, whether it's anything that they maybe have a particular cause that they're interested in. And if you have not gotten the chance to meet Nick Yugioh, I can tell you that he is very involved in things like music. So I wanted to ask you, man, what made you get into, music? I know you attended Belmont, and so that was also a school that people know for the music program. So kind of talk to us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I came to Nashville in 2011. I came from Akron, Ohio. So born, raised, 18 years back in Northeast Ohio. And, I decided to go to Belmont to, just kind of do something different with my life. I thought, I spent my entire life here. I might as well go somewhere else and try something new. And, music was a big part of my life growing up. I was really big when it came to metalcore and deathcore. And there's a lot of pretty ridiculous photos on my, if you comb through my Facebook deep enough.
Oh, yeah.
I just was really into that kind of music, and it was big in Northeast Ohio, and I was like, well, I kind of like going in, I love music, so I might as well try to go into it. And so I spent 4 years, obviously, at Belmont, got my BBA there, and, now I'm a tour publicist for New West Records and a couple of independent acts, and, done some management in the past and stuff like that. But, yeah, these days I worked primarily in PR, working for, a lot of rock and Americana acts, and it's really cool to have found kind of a home there. I feel like I've definitely been doing it in the for the past few years and kind of really nestled into that area of the music industry.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see your career and how it's touched. First of all, it's touched so many different artists. Like, I know I've been to a couple different gatherings that you've had, whether it's been an artist that's launching a new album and they're kind of talking about that there, and I was able to attend some of those.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things that I kind of noticed is just like it exposes you to so many different genres, man. Like I remember when I used to talk to you, and there were times where you were at a show like almost every night of the week. It felt like.
Yeah.
Uh, it,
Definitely, no rest for the wicked. It was shows night after night after night. And that was definitely when I was working, as an artist coach and working as kind of like, a basically manager, but non-exclusively, so to
Mhm.
speak, and really helping bands get off the ground. But I think music, what makes it so special is seeing beyond the capacity of an artist, and I think the chemistry that people have
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
just essential, and I think that is what allows music to flourish. Is I think, you know, I see bands all the time, and I feel like artists sometimes want to be an artist more than they want to make music, if that makes sense. Whether
Yeah.
it's about the shtick of being an artist or finding a groove and finding an angle, but I really think that it's where ingenuity and I think candidness and maybe an exposure of just their own personal element is what makes music great. And I think that's what is the thing that can transcend genre. And I
Mhm.
think that that paired with insane musical talent is always
Yeah.
pretty solid. But
Yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of my perception of things. And now that I've been working for almost 6 years
Mhm.
in music, and that's kind of just the one thing I've taken away from everything. Wherever I go, whether it be for seeing some person at Marathon, a venue here in Nashville, or the local
Mhm.
dive. Shout out to the end, love that
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
I think it's really just the soul and energy that they put into their music that makes things special, and I think that the quote unquote business around it kind of envelops, and we see bands like that thrive. And I
Yeah.
think that's why, in this music industry, finding that is what I think is so, makes things so important when it comes to, working in music. And I think, that's what it would be for a band to, make something special here. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people do.
I mean, there's so many different artists in Nashville. I mean, I know the pilot episode of our podcast we mentioned the Valley Girls, and we'll talk more about them here in just a second because I do want to talk about those guys and kind of how you met them.
Yeah.
But one of the big things that I also kind of wanted to say, on this music note is you are just into so many different genres, man. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing that I've always kind of respected. It's like, not only are you going to these live shows, your genres are all over the place.
Oh yeah,
I
dude.
mean,
I've got. You have no idea how many times I've screamed to a pup song in my car, only to pump myself up for the rest of the day by just going right into Kanye's new workout plan. So
right?
I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
that's just
yeah. You and Kanye, man, that is something
those
that
are two very different moves. And then sometimes you just want to ugly cry to Avicii, and that's okay.
yeah, man. I mean, it's just been like I said when I think about what you do in the music industry, it's just like, dude, I can listen to a lot of genres, but I don't know that I could go through the grind of going to shows 3 4 times a night or 3 or 4 times a week. And I remember you even used to talk about having to wear the earplugs to make sure you could kind of still hear every night, right, and still listen to music.
Red Bull helps.
And oh yeah, dude. Oh, Red Bull and definitely I imagine some Cokes as well, right? Some Pepsis, some Sprites. Definitely nothing else in
Yeah,
those
no booze.
beverages. Yeah,
Never,
never.
never. No fun at all. Totally
No.
sober, having no fun at all.
I
I
mean,
thought you were making like a blow joke right there when you said
no,
those cokes.
no, no.
I was like,
Uh,
on my good Christian podcast,
that's hilarious. But
for the record, I have never done coke.
th-
Never will.
thank you. Thank you. Not even once.
Not even once. You wouldn't download a car, Tim. God. You wouldn't snort a car either.
I just love every time I hear somebody say I've never done something. I always think of that. It's this comedian dude, and it's Chris D'Elia,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he cracks me up because he has this one bit about not even once, and then it just makes everything sound that much better. But yeah, so let's talk about some of the bands that you've worked with, and I know that this is definitely a topic that there's a lot of things attached to it because I've definitely seen some of the bands that you've worked with people that are listening probably might have heard of some of the bands that you are going to be talking about here because some of them have gained a lot of traction. I know that you've talked about some different bands. So let's kind of hear from your perspective. I mean, starting with maybe one of the first bands that you started managing, if you don't mind, giving them a little bit of a background or who they are.
Yeah.
But what was maybe one of the first bands that you were managing or helping manage?
So probably one of the first ones that I got to really go hands on with was a guy named Ross Livermore.
Mm-hmm.
Ross was one of those bands that when I was working at AGD Entertainment, he came into the 0 to 60 by AGD program,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just he was such a genuine guy, really talented songwriter. I think that was probably the thing I noticed most about him was that he had a good voice and he kind of carried himself, like he knew what he was
Mm-hmm.
doing. He was confident.
What genre, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
Like singer-songwriter, soul-esque,
Okay.
kind of
Okay.
like for anyone watching this, if you've heard of like Alan Stone or anything like that,
Okay.
kind of those vibes, like soulful white guy.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Soulful white guy would probably be the best way to describe him, but
Uh huh.
with a dash of being a diehard Pats fan that's insufferable. But I
Oh
love you,
jeez.
Ross,
Oh jeez.
even though we might steal your quarterback, but neither here nor there. No, Ross just he was such a good songwriter. Like he
Yeah.
really, I felt like he wrote from the heart, and I think he just was so good at like hitting a hook that it grabbed
Mm-hmm.
you. His "This Is Not Forever" EP, that was probably one of the very first records I worked,
Mm-hmm.
and that just had so many gems of good songs. "All About You" or "Calling California," and
Yeah.
that was my first kind of experience working with him from a full artist capacity. Overseeing like his release strategy and his booking strategy, and his kind of like posting on social media, making it all come together. And that's kind of what my background came in was like, that kind of jack of all trades, master of none shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of was my background. Is like I was working so many different angles with artists. Brand partnerships, booking, just day to day management. Picking out their friggin' hex codes.
Dude, you were on tour with
Website.
some of these
Oh
bands.
yeah, dude.
I mean,
Yeah, so I mean, it was all in the aspect of developing acts, which
yeah.
we were definitely we had some of those really solid shows, but like there were definitely times where we'd be in East Jesus Nowhere playing to 10 people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like that's kind of all part of it. Is like it's the experience.
It's the journey,
It's
right?
the grind. It's the journey, and so like it's really cool
Yeah.
to see a lot of those bands grow. And I know another one for they're called Lonely Youth now, but they used to go by Forever and Never. And just the layout of everything was so different, and it just took years of doing it, and just
Yeah.
working with how the sausage gets made, and you just kind of have to work hard at that. And but you have to be genuine at the same time if you really want to be able to thrive and feel personally fulfilled at the same time. And I think that's what makes artists so special is the ones that are able to make that art that
Mm-hmm.
feels so personally fulfilled
Yeah.
and genuine is where you see those artists start to thrive, because I feel like a lot of times people try to be other people. I feel like people try to be like, oh, I sound like such and such, or I'm going for like the influences of such and such. Like
Yeah.
you're trying too hard to be that person, which I think is fine for like your early work, because I mean, finding your voice is hard, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just even good, life advice. Like finding your voice is hard, and it's hard even when you're making music. And so I think that it just takes that kind of practice, and that's what I think Ross has done. I know Ross has got some songs coming out, and I feel like he possesses that ability to see music from his own personal perspective and not trying to like write music for other people.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just kind of an interesting perspective of things.
That's just really interesting to think that you've probably met. Like I know that before we got on air, one of the conversations that we were having. I mean, we talked quite a bit, but one of the conversations we were having was like how some artists try to be a character more than being somebody, I guess, that maybe people could more relate to, and it's not so. I don't want to use the word. I guess cosmetic. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
it's kind of plastic instead of the real person.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's definitely got to be interesting to have to like work side by side with because you know you were on tour with these guys. You're helping even film music videos
Yeah.
with some of these guys. So that's just a lot. And I don't know. There was also there was a female artist that you worked with too, if I remember correctly too. She was a part of a band. I don't know. You might be able to help out with the name here.
Oh, Crisis in the Foundation.
Yeah, I didn't want to I didn't
Yeah.
want to bring up the name.
Oh, yeah,
I wanted to let you.
Sam. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. So can you kind of talk about how you worked with them? Because I know that was a little bit of something there too.
Yeah, no, we sent them out on a bunch of weekend runs. I was their tour manager for a handful of them, but
Hmm.
yeah, we I that was probably the full first full length album that we did. So like the Ross EP was an EP. It was only like
Hmm.
5 or 6 songs, but this one was 10 or 12, and that's another person is like I thought she was such a talented songwriter, and it's really interesting. Like I think she's a super talented songwriter, charismatic, singer.
Hmm.
Just solid, super solid all around. I think
Yeah.
what
Super
I
nice.
yeah,
Super nice.
I just think that that's another person who I think has the ability to write good songs, and like I think that we see a lot of a difference. There's like kind of two layers of the industry. There's your artists and then there's your songwriters, and I think that um, artists like that. I think that a lot of those people, as time goes on and they continue to have a music career, because I think I see a music career as how do you make your life sustainable through the concept of music.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how I view the music industry as a whole. That's my own personal philosophy. So like if you wanted to be an artist, I first start like asking like how do you define success? Do you want to be an artist or do you want to have a career in music? And so
Yeah.
your career evolves over time. You may
Yeah.
start out when you're young as an artist because that's your purest form of expressing it. But as time goes on, maybe you realize that you have a strong ear for production, or you see your talents in songwriting, or maybe you even hop to the other side of the desk and you might have a lot of booking connections, or you probably do
Hmm.
all of that in both. Because I mean, not everybody gives up on the artist thing. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
can be an artist, but you can also be an engineer and have the engineer kind of be your quote unquote income, and then
Yeah.
like fulfill yourself
Huh.
creatively through your artistry. And so it's the music industry, in my opinion, is kind of like an all-encompassing, all-knowing, all ways that you can make money, or find your success or what you define as success, whether that be creatively, fiscally, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of how I see the all-encompassing music industry with that kind of stuff. And so I
Yeah.
think that's what's going to make these artists that are coming out now have like see like their success grow and see their skills get better just as time goes on, and finding the home for that skill,
Yeah.
not necessarily in the artist realm, which could still certainly thrive, but allows you to open yourself up to an entire side of the music industry that may have not necessarily been available to you, just based on your skill set, experience, knowledge, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I just know that we and for those of you guys that may not be as familiar with this, because this is the first episode, so Nick and I will be co-producing this show
Mm-hmm.
and doing this podcast, and we're planning on having a lot of artists on. In fact, next week, our guest that we will announce officially this week, we'll announce probably Monday, so that way we have a little bit more confirmation on that. But excuse me, I can tell you that our guest in 2 Saturdays from now will actually be not necessarily a musician, but somebody that works with a lot of people. And I'll drop his name later on as well. But with all the music artists that we're talking to, I just think that it's so cool that you can relate to them and the grind that they have to put into, what it takes to get themselves out there, the advertising aspect of it, what it's like to be on the road. Because I mean, even in just my short time of being in Nashville, obviously I've been in Nashville since like 2009, but in my short time, I've run across so many people that do try to become an artist. And I have former students that try to become artists. And so, some of those people will probably be guests on here. But I just think that it's so interesting to be able to have your perspective and have your experience to be able to like kind of bounce things off of too. Because I mean, to be real honest, I mean, when you look at what we're doing here at Total Media Live, our podcast is relatively new. People are probably going to have to. We're going to have to do the same thing that a lot of these artists are doing in terms of relating to people.
I mean, think about it. Like, we're in our very first episodes, and we're stoked when we get, like, 20 views on a video.
Oh
Like, I
yeah,
mean, how stoked would you be, like, if 20 people showed up to see your band play? Like, that would still be
yeah,
sick. Obviously, you kind of hope that you work at it more because, obviously you want to your music or your content or your creativity to reach other people. But
yeah,
it's all part of the plan. It's all part of the
yeah.
plan, and it's all important. And I think that coming from a genuine mindset and
Mm-hmm.
a genuine aspect of yourself is what makes it so unique. And I think that that's if an artist or if any creative can find that success and also define what it means to feel success for themselves. I think those are the two things that push you to the next level.
I think it's like it's a process. At the end of the day, I think it kind of reflects what life is. It's kind of like everything is somewhat of a process, man. You have to understand that there's probably going to be really bad times that are not so enjoyable or not a highlight, right?
Yeah.
You as an artist go on tour and like you said, you get 10 people at a show. You're like, well, man, that's not great, but hey, people are coming to see you, just like you're saying,
Right.
and it's about the journey of being able to appreciate that, and as it grows,
Mm-hmm.
appreciating the fact that it's growing and looking at it as it grows,
Yeah.
and I think that, man, that's you see that in athletics, you see that in martial arts, you see that in trading card, anything competitive. I mean, there's always a time when you were not very good
Yeah.
at some of those things, or you just were relatively new to those things.
And even in seasons of life, like not every year is going to be your best year. I mean,
Yeah.
not every year can be a 73-9 for the Eagles and lose to the Cleveland Cavaliers and probably one lead.
Very true. Very true.
I'm sorry, what were we talking about? No, but I think I think you got to start somewhere, and I think that I mean, what's the Confucius saying? A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Like I think that's
Yeah.
I know. I'm just trying to be a Jedi. Just
Philosophy.
Oh, he's a philosophizer now.
No, dude, but seriously, that's one thing that, like I said, we've got to continue to, let everybody know, guys. We are trying to build something that is more natural. Like, for example, I mean, I didn't tell you anything that I was going to ask you when we got on here. We never wanted to do anything like that. We wanted to make this all as organic as possible.
Oh, yeah.
And the only thing that's different is we got some lights around us. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, see, I said it right that time, right? If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can't see anything obviously because you're listening. But it's just, I hope that you guys know we want to bring in guests that are real, that are going to be intimate with our audience, and we hope that our audience also, feels free and feels like they can also come join as well. I mean, there's more details on that that you can check out on our website and on our Patreon. But shameless plug, right? But anyway, so let's talk about something else here, Nick. We've talked about music for quite a while,
Yeah.
but some of the things that you're doing now. I know that a lot of the times, this is kind of not necessarily the most exciting part of the year. We're pretty much out of a lot of sporting seasons. The only thing we got going on is basketball. I know another large component of our friendship has definitely been sports.
Oh,
So,
yeah. I mean,
let's talk about that for a second.
I mean, how many countless iconic sports moments have we watched together?
Yeah, I mean, a ton of national championships,
Yeah.
a ton of NBA Finals games.
Yes, the Cleveland Cavaliers winning their first NBA championship.
Incredible, guys.
I know.
I mean, for those of you that can see, obviously, I've got a Lakers hat here on the table here, and it's a little bit bittersweet. But I will tell you that if LeBron James could go to any other team, I'm pretty sure Nick would have said that he'd be fine with them going to the Lakers. I hope,
Yeah,
but
sure.
he probably wanted to keep him. I'll be real honest with you, but.
I go get more of that fireball.
let's talk about how sports has kind of kind of been more something that you've paid attention to in the more recent years, and how you've adopted Nashville as somewhat of like a second sports home city.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I've lived here almost a decade now. God, that's terrifying to think about.
It's a long time.
That is such a long time. We've been friends for almost the equivalent of how long I've lived in Nashville. That
Boom.
is damn. That's crazy. But I mean, I'm still like a Ohio stan. I will always like nothing above all else will shake my bedrock of my fandom in the Ohio State University.
Oh geez, you got to put the in
I
there.
do. You're damn right. What's that Walter White meme? You're
Oh man.
goddamn right.
Uh, the Buckeyes. So yeah, I mean, and we didn't necessarily talk about the Buckeyes on our pilot, uh,
Nah.
but you're definitely a huge OSU fan, and you've actually been to some of the games too, including some of the big games in the past, right?
Oh yeah. So probably. I mean, so my mom is an Ohio State alum, and so like it was just kind of raised with me at birth.
Born
Pretty
a
much.
Buckeye, you know.
Oh yeah. Just born a Buckeye, bro. I mean, no, seriously, no joke. When I was like one or two, my parents were at a game, and literally they were sitting up in like the front rows, and like Brutus like grabbed me as a kid and ran around the field with me. I think that is just like the college football equivalent of being baptized at that point.
That is actually hilarious.
Oh yeah,
That's actually
it's just
hilarious.
like this one little tidbit of information that I didn't remember until just now. It was like 100% true. Um,
People are gonna be like, "We want footage right now.
oh
We
yeah,
we want footage of that."
but in terms of like big games, so my first one was when I was 4. My parents took me to the Rose Bowl against Arizona State in '96,
Jeez.
and they won that. It was like a really close game.
Yeah.
It was
Huh.
like Jake the Snake was the quarterback. I don't know what his last name
Yeah,
is.
like Jake Plummer, I want to say maybe.
Yeah, I think it was Jake
Because I
Plummer.
think I actually watched
I was
that
gonna
game
say
on
I was
TV.
gonna say Jake Locker, but I don't think it's Jake Locker. I'm thinking it's Jake Plummer.
Yeah, Jake Locker was much more recent with the Washington Huskies. He's the guy that was for the Titans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He
So
got
it
hit
was
a
Jake.
little too
It was Jake
much.
Plummer. But yeah, they ended up winning that game. But really, I went when I was 11. I went to the 02-03 national championship against
Sick.
03-04 national championship against
That's sick.
the Miami Hurricanes. Yeah, that I wish I had. Now that I'm being what I am
Yeah.
and in my fandom, I wish I had like known a little bit more what was going on.
Yeah.
I know. I was really concerned about my Yugioh Game Boy game then. I wish I would have been a little bit more concerned about,
I just want a duel.
because I've definitely been I've been really stressed over Ohio State games in the past 2 to 3 years.
Ooh, yeah.
But like that's such history. So like I got to see the national championship. I remember it vividly. And then I mean, not necessarily the gameplay, but I remember, being in a sea of red, storming out on the streets of Tempe, Arizona.
Yeah.
And I've been on the other side of it where I watched Ohio State get beat to sleep by Florida in the national championship.
Ooh, which ironically was by Urban Meyer at the time.
Yeah, right?
And so Urban Meyer has definitely been one of those people that we've talked about throughout the years. And Urban Meyer is such a polarizing coach. He's somebody that obviously got a lot of heat in the media for his one of his assistant coaches, who ironically was a wide receiver coach. And as am I, but he was a wide receiver coach, and his wide receiver coach had gotten into a little bit of trouble with a lot of problems that definitely should have been addressed in a different way. And unfortunately, Urban Meyer was not able to act, and so he received a lot of heat in the press. But I mean, still at the same time, you have to kind of think of yourself as a fan of the team. Would you have wanted to see somebody like Urban Meyer stay around? And was it worth it for Ohio State to get rid of him?
So here's my hot take: is that I think Ryan Day will be a better coach than Urban Meyer.
Mm.
I think he's better for Ohio State. I think that Urban Meyer's fine. Here's how I experience it. So and you could say this is also the team that they had this year, just with how well they were and how many kids are about to go in the first round.
Yeah.
And or first, second, third, stacked team this year. And unfortunately, nobody will remember it because the refs host us. But that's another thing. But
Some pretty rough
I
calls.
think Ryan Day is the fresh energy that Ohio State needed.
Yeah.
He's really young. He's very talented. I think he's an excellent. I think he's a consistent coach. And see, with Urban, you definitely felt like there was always going to be that one game of year where it was just they're gonna. It was like you. I felt like with Urban Meyer, you're always going to get a trap game
Yeah.
versus with Ryan Day, like all the ranked games are going to be close, and you're going to probably edge them out at one point. But I felt like with Urban Meyer, there was always going to be that one ridiculous game we dropped or we played so far behind, and then we just at the end of the game just sack our opponent, like literally sacking them or just hitting them with
Yeah.
a bomb.
Yeah.
But with Urban Meyer, you got games where you got blown out by Iowa, unranked Iowa, like 55-34. But with Ryan Day, it was dominating. It was super clean fundamentally.
Yeah.
It was just very consistent, and I really like that. And I think it's pretty amazing that you can kind of so-called fall backwards into one of the best college coaching jobs in America.
Yeah, I mean one phrase that I've heard a lot in coaching and is that you never want to follow the guy.
No.
You never want to follow the Nick Saban. You never want to follow Bobby Bowden. You never want to follow Urban Meyer. I mean, look at Florida, for example, right? I mean, obviously they've had some ups and some downs. The Tennessee fans that are listening are thinking of the Jawan Jennings Hail Mary that they caught on Florida where it's like the first time they beat Florida in forever.
Right.
But it's just one of those things where you don't want to follow the guys. So for you guys in the fan base of, to feel so confident in this guy is pretty interesting.
I think this year will be a big test here because obviously, no Chase Young, no Jeff Okuda, no Chris Olave, no J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah.
No insert senior player here.
It's his players, man. I mean, honestly, when we look at it as a football coach point of view, we're saying, hey, now you've got the guys that you're recruiting and you're developing. Yeah. Now it's not so much how the previous coach developed them. Now it's on to you.
Yeah.
And trust me, that's a big difference that not a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
I think he's got a lot of talent drain. I mean, Chase Young going at 2 this year most likely.
Oh yeah.
I think this is kind of what we'll see. Like we get a full year. I mean, that was kind of our first full year, but I think we get a really different reset this year to see kind of how we get. Ryan Day gets to strut his stuff, so to speak, because I feel like a narrative for last year would also be just like, oh, these are all Urban Meyer's players.
Exactly.
Herp.
Well, I mean, honestly, it in an essence it kind of is. Now the big thing to notice is that in football your assistant coaches have to develop the players. That and that's what they do every day in practice, right? But like a lot of the time, it's the old John Gruden thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where a lot of people will reference, well, hey, John Gruden won a Super Bowl. And then a lot of people will also retort with, yeah, with Tony Dungy's players.
Do you know what I retort with?
I don't know.
When you hear that stuff, I'd probably say, don't believe the groomers.
You're right? Like, you just doesn't matter. They won,
Maybe if he gets Tom Brady this year.
Dude, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
I do know that a lot of people have been talking about, obviously in our last podcast, in our pilot podcast, we talked about the Titans potentially getting Tom Brady. And it's really interesting to see the city's continuously talking about it. And there's a lot of ways it could go.
Did you hear about the guy who said, I can't remember the sports pundit, but he agreed that if Tom Brady stays with the New England Patriots, that he would be tased live on the Dan Lebron show because he said he would be stunned if Brady didn't leave the Patriots.
I did hear the stunned part. I did not know the literal stunned part.
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me? At this day and age, if there is a point to make some sweet, juicy content,
that's ridiculous.
We'll know that that's going to happen.
That's actually ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. But you're going to tune in, right? You're definitely going to either watch it live and or the YouTube clip of him getting tased on live television.
Unfortunately, I probably will, just like I unfortunately watched that Bills fan who jumped from that bridge in Nashville and I'll just say this: at least he didn't die.
I didn't even know that that happened.
Oh, dude, yeah, it was like a Bills mafia was here, and they were breaking tables as
They
they
lived and
tradition.
they're continuing to live a healthy life. I need to know that before I can make fun of them.
I mean, yes, they did live, but they broke a little bit of their neck. I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
What's wrong with you, dude?
I mean, they lived. They
They
lived.
lived. What is there a table in the river somewhere?
Yeah, so that was the other thing, right? Like, why would you think that you could jump from that high up? I mean, the dude was definitely on like a bridge. I mean, it was pretty high up
He
there,
was
man.
definitely also probably on a lot of drugs.
Yeah, he
And drinking a lot.
probably was not sober.
Oh yeah. I mean, you gonna
Probably
jump
not.
off a bridge if you're sober, even if your friends do it.
No, no. Oh yeah, right. Even if your friends do it,
Sorry, I had to pull out a little bit of a boomer quote there.
that's very boomer esque. But yeah, man. I mean, when you talk about sports, I mean, we also talked about the Nashville soccer team in the pilot, and they're actually playing their first game right now.
Yeah.
50,000 tickets sold, and I mean, hey, man, I'm just telling you, if I got to kidnap you, and if I got to kidnap you and Sam, I'm gonna do this, man. We're gonna make it
I mean, you could
to one of
probably.
these
I was
games.
gonna say you could probably just work a daddy's dog shift, and
Very true. Very true.
it's fun.
Big shout out to Daddy's Dogs,
Big
by the
shout out
way.
to daddy's dogs. But yeah, I mean, like that's the thing is like I after the Titans game, I worked a Titans game and I got to watch the game and it was awesome and I got to see Michael Thomas break the single cast like I think the catch record for a wide receiver.
Yeah, I think it might have been yards or catches. It was either yard. It was definitely
One of those two.
yeah, it was one of those two.
One of those two. But I mean that's awesome.
Yeah.
Just get to stuff my face full of hot dogs and watch a guy from the Ohio State University break records.
And Drew Brees. I mean, little Drew Brees in action.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. I mean, like I said, when it comes to the different things that a lot of our activities kind of been based around, it's been a lot based around those two things. Music, a little sports action.
Yeah.
And then, when you talk a little bit more about some of the pop culture stuff, man, I mean, we both try to enjoy a lot of the same things. I know that I've seen a lot of Game of Thrones with you.
Oh,
Could you imagine if we had this podcast when Game of Thrones is going on,
yeah.
dude?
I know we've definitely experienced a lot of just unique moments in pop culture history. But honestly, I think the funniest thing is just how you and I met, and that being
Very true.
In a former lifetime, Timothy and I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh.
Very long time ago.
Very long time
ago,
ago.
right?
I mean, I loved it as a kid, and then I got to the point when I was free from on my own in college, and I was like, wait, I can do this whenever I want, and I have the income and capacity to purchase the cards I want,
Yeah,
and just
yeah.
like 13-year-old me inside was just so absolutely stoked, and definitely maybe dove headfirst into it, but. The way Tim and I know each other and how the first time that we met
Mm-hmm.
was another mutual friend of ours and we became friends at college, and I had brought my two old Yu-Gi-Oh decks to college with me, and I had looked it up. We had played a couple games, and I looked it up, and I saw that there was a shop,
Mm-hmm.
a handful of miles outside of the city, and I was like, it'd be fun to go to this one of these tournaments and see if it's like popping and there's actually stuff going. So we ended up going there, and that shop is jam packed. It's jam packed, and I was baffled. And it's not like
That's
kids
hilarious.
running around. It's grown ass men. It's grown ass men and women. Here to hustle.
Duel.
Duel. And so we're kind of like, okay, so we sit down from our opponents, and my friend ends up playing Tim, and we end up we start playing, and we both just get our asses kicked. Yeah, so Tim is definitely just beaming up on our friend, and I just remember like you being confused by the cards that he was choosing to play, and like probably thinking, and I remember because you said this to me one time in your apartment, it's like I thought you all were a bunch of scrubs, but you guys were booty ass players, and I mean
That's hilarious.
You weren't wrong, but I remember that, and so I just remember kind of eventually. Just getting to know you guys, and
Yeah.
you realizing like once we were able to acquire decent cards, being like, oh, these dudes actually don't suck.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Tim. Thank you for believing that we didn't suck anymore and wanted to be friends with us.
Dude, yeah, I mean it's really cool. You know, I had been playing card games on and off for like a long time, so it's just weird to see that I have friends from like so many different phases of like my childhood, my teenage years, and then even a little bit because I was like, I mean, I had to be like 20, like almost 21 when I met you guys. So like, it was definitely in like the last phase of me like even playing these games, and it's kind of cool to say that before I was able to like completely step away from one of my best childhood memories, I was able to meet people that were so cool and so many different people. Like it's incredible that the community is so strong, dude. Like I genuinely love whenever I run into people that I used to know through cards and like talking to them on Facebook.
It's
It's
just
cool.
so funny that that's the thing that you have in common with somebody because I definitely feel like obviously like card games and stuff like that get that there's a little bit of a jaded perception of it, your neckbeards and your people that don't shower and
Oh yeah.
the dude posing with butt cracks on Reddit and getting banned from Reddit for doing that at a Magic Grand Prix. So there's definitely some stigma that comes
Uh
with it, but I agree. I think it's I mean, like we know for like I mean, just thinking of the people in our group, there's somebody who's a doctor. There's a person who coaches. There's kids who are personal trainers. It's all walks of life, and I think it's so hilarious that it can all stem from a subculture of trading cards. I mean,
yeah.
hell, there's a guy I know in music who is an avid Hearthstone player.
Oh
Like, I
yeah,
mean,
dude.
it's so funny to watch it kind of grow and evolve, and I think that's also us clinging to the nostalgia of loving for what it is. Like, I mean, some of my best childhood memories are playing Yugioh.
Yeah, I mean, it's just cool to see that a lot. I mean, this is a pretty big topic. I know a lot of people because our content does kind of like cross match, and we are going to have to decide what to do with that. But like,
I mean, it's just
this.
facets of our personality.
Well, no, I'm talking about the stigma of like anime, of trading card games, the stigma that stuff carries. It's a very popular topic, dude. I mean, like, you have it as such a subculture, yet it's so popular worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are so many kids that grow up enjoying this stuff, but not feeling okay with expressing it. And obviously you could make this about a lot of other things in culture, but strictly speaking about kids liking anime or people liking anime, people liking trading card games, people liking even any kind of mobile game, whether it's Fruit Ninja or Fortnite but like it's just cool to see society is becoming more open to, hey, there's an NBA player that likes anime, or there's a NFL player that enjoys playing Fortnite, or it's just because we've all, like, honestly, dude, I've always known doctors and physicians and like nurses and like people that play trading card games because they always have.
Yeah,
It's
knew what
just
they did, but it just wasn't as
no, because I played against them.
right.
You know what I mean? Like I literally knew them because I went into the shop and they were there. And so like the fact that society is now like making it okay for those people to like for example, in some of the channels that I watch, like like for example, I'll plug Alpha Investments. Alpha Investments will say that a doctor is buying some of his Magic the Gathering boxes. But like it's more normal. It's more okay. And I'm just so happy for that because, dude, I know a lot of kids that look like me, or maybe somewhat look like me, or even different adults maybe that are in my situation, but they basically may not feel okay about expressing how much they like anime, or how much they like trading card games, or how much they like video games. And I'm like, dude, forget that. Just enjoy being you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that was something that I used to hate whenever I was like younger in high school and in college when I played these games, and I just felt like there were people staring at me. I'm like, dude, you realize all the places we get to go, like to have fun, and all the cities we get to go,
I mean, hell, you and I have traveled halfway across the country for it. I mean, we went to
dude, we went to
You went to
Austin,
Seattle, didn't you?
Los Angeles. I mean, we went to Long Beach. Didn't you go with
I
us?
didn't go to
Okay,
Long
you didn't go to
Beach.
Long Beach.
I
So
wish I had.
yeah, dude. I mean, Long Beach, Austin, Seattle, Chicago,
Yeah.
St. Louis,
Atlanta.
Atlanta, Miami. If you went to Miami, I never went to Miami for anything. But there's just events all over the place that our friends. I mean, dude, my first event that I ever went to on a big scale was obviously a regional, but like if I was talking like an actual like major event,
Yeah.
I mean in 2005, like I got to go to Nats in Ohio of all
Yeah.
places, dude. And like, it was also a time period where like it's not like I could have gone to school and say, "Hey, friends, my friends on the basketball team or my friends that have been like, yo, dude, I'm going to Yugioh Nats, and I'm like one of the only 13-year-olds that's qualified." Like, I couldn't say that.
Right.
You know what I mean? There was no YouTube, no internet to like
To do that.
to push that out there and how and to get information.
Right.
And so that's why I think it's just so cool to as we got older and more into our adult life, be able to give platforms for people like that,
Yeah.
to give content for people like that on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, and I think
You know,
really you see the two evolutions of why you're seeing that now is one, I think the communication aspect of it, like you just said, where like there are these hubs and these places and these communities, and the other thing is I think people now who are all interested in that time when it first got popular didn't have the income to properly play the game that they
I mean, there
wanted
were
to.
older people too at that time. Though you have to remember, we were young, but there were people our age.
Yeah,
There were people that were 16, 17, 18-year-old with jobs. You know what I mean? So like, there's always been people with money. It's just that maybe we were not the ones in that.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, honestly, it wasn't even like it was a money issue. It was more like, dude, well, for me it was. You know what I mean? But for some people, it's like, dude, they don't want to spend the money to be good at this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, traveling to Nats was like $200-300 back then, and that was a lot of money for us. You know what I mean? I was like, dude, I'm barely making it to Nats. So it was just, it's like I said, I'm just glad that the stigma of trading card games, of anime, of video games, I'm glad that that's going away. You're starting to see grown men posting their Fortnite stuff. You know what I mean?
2020, bro.
It's awesome. You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad that we're moving forward and people can be them.
Yeah, you know what they say, hindsight is 2020.
Dude, I get it. 2020, 2020.
You did it.
But yeah, man. Like I said, there's a lot of trading card game history, and there's just a lot to it. And so when you look at some of the pop culture stuff, man, it's been cool to experience this stuff with you. And I hope that our audience has enjoyed listening to us kind of talk about some of the different things that you know you were able to share about music, that you were able to share about kind of what it was like being in your shoes.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, I'm so glad I got to kind of chat about that and kind of my experiences in life, and I'm so honored to have been the first guest.
Dude, thank you for coming on, man.
First guest where you will probably see my face streaming on Twitch Monday morning.
Dude. Yeah, so real quick as we kind of wrap things up, because I know we're gonna, honestly, we didn't want to make this too long. We do want to keep these, in that 45-minute to about an hour range, so that way it's just enough for you to have like a nice little commute. Maybe you're driving home, maybe you're driving to work, maybe you've got a two-way commute. You can listen to one part on the way to work or one part on the way home. Or maybe you're watching on YouTube live and you just want to go ahead and watch something, as you have background noise. I don't know.
Maybe you're the FBI agent in our computer watching all
Dun,
of
dun,
this
dun.
for us. Maybe our FBI agent is gonna knock on our door and petition to be the show's producer.
Don't jinx it, dude. Don't jinx it. I'm too nervous.
The man behind the glass,
Just
physically and literally.
a Men in Black just shows up. But like as you guys kind of look at it, once again, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. If that's where you're listening, please give us a rating, guys. That would be fantastic. And if you are watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Please check out that subscribe button. It'll let you be notified whenever we do have new content coming out. And if you're interested in more podcasts, I can tell you that our next podcast will be next Saturday. hopefully the exact same time. We do want to be consistent at that. So be ready for that 4 p.m. Central Time. If that does change, we'll let you know in a video coming forward. But you can find this podcast on SoundCloud. You can also find it on Apple Podcast. And once again, you can also find us on YouTube. And guys, this is Total Media Live. It's been a pleasure to be on our first official episode. And Nick, dude, once again, thank you for coming by, man.
Thank you for having
Big
me.
thanks, man.
Yep.
Big thanks. Well, anyways, guys, have a great rest of the day.
Take care.